A portion of this video is sponsored by Dropbox. I remember it literally being a Tuesday and I looked at my bank account and I think I had 56 cents in there because I had overdrafted it and I wasn't going to have any money until Thursday. And that was completely normal for me. Today, we are talking about habits that made me a broke artist. Now, a few weeks ago, I put out a video titled Rich Artist versus Poor Artist. In this video, I talked about a lot of big macro lessons that I've learned over the years of doing this creative career, some of the big mistakes that I made. But today, I want to talk more on a macro level on the things I was doing in my day-to-day life that made me that broke artist that I was when I first started this journey. And I think this video is going to be relevant to a lot of people out there because obviously the big stuff is important, but the big stuff can't happen without the small day-to-day changes. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first habit that made me a broke artist was limiting self-beliefs and self-sabotage. Now, I know that sounds a little woo-woo and wacky, but I never saw myself as someone who could have money. And I'm not exactly sure where this stems from. Maybe it stems from just not having a lot of money growing up myself. My parents were a pretty normal middle-class family, and they might argue against me on this, but growing up, I remember money being a stressful point in our household. I could always tell it stressed my dad out, especially having two kids who were going to need to go to college, and I might have carried this same energy about money into my adult life. Money was something that always stressed me out, and it never felt normal to have a lot of money at once. I viewed myself as someone who was always going to be hustling and always needed to have a reason to be trying to make more money, aka not having enough of it. I was stuck in what they call a boom and bust cycle, which is something I learned about, ironically, in a criminal class that I took at Georgia State University my freshman year. The professor was Vulcan Topali, really cool guy, but he taught us about how people who are conditioned to not have a lot, when they get something, they immediately essentially blow it up. They bust, they spend all their money. It wasn't until my mid-20s where I looked around and thought to myself, this isn't normal. You shouldn't always get money and spend it. You should have some type of plan to save money. You can be that person who has money in the bank, has $100,000 saved, has a real emergency fund saved. And I started working on this mindset and this internal view of myself, and I started making smarter decisions. And these smarter decisions also translated into my business as well. I did a lot of things in my business essentially to keep myself from making the amount of money that I could, because I didn't view myself as someone who deserved to be getting paid $20,000, $25,000 a month. I would think, I made $3,000 last month. That's way too much money. When are people going to find out that I'm some sham and some ruse? And as I started changing my mindset around money, I was actually able to save money. And I saw myself as someone who could save money and actually have the financial freedom that I wanted. If you want to learn more about this concept, I highly recommend you check out the book Psycho-Cybernetics. It's a book that was published in the 60s. It's considered like the grandfather, holy grail of self-help books, and it's all about mental image and overcoming the way that you see yourself. Because if you don't see yourself as the person you want to be, you're never actually going to get there. I highly recommend that book. It's awesome. Now, the second thing is organization. And before we get into that, this portion of the video is brought to you by Dropbox. Thank you to Dropbox for sponsoring this portion of the video. Because early on in my creative career, something that everyone overlooks is backing up their work. We spend all this time creating and we spend no time on how we're going to back these things up. And I know for me, the easy answer was always buying these really inexpensive hard drives. And one day I went and plugged one of those hard drives into my computer and everything was gone. The hard drive had crashed, all my hard work, all my memories were lost, all those blood, sweat, and tears down the drain. And that was a really unfortunate way to learn a valuable lesson about protecting the things that I was creating. The Dropbox backup plan is the perfect solution to anyone using these external drives but wants the safety and security of having all your files backed up in the cloud. So in the case of a crash, or even worse, a computer crash, all your files are recoverable. The unlimited for one computer and one external drive Dropbox backup plan allows you to take advantage of the 3-2-1 backup method, which is a term coined by photographer Peter Korg in his 2005 book about digital asset management, meaning you have your files on two external sources, maybe a large hard drive, maybe a smaller hard drive, or your computer, and then everything is also backed up in the cloud with Dropbox backup. It's super easy to set up for the first time, and anytime you're using your computer, your files are automatically being backed up into the cloud, and anytime you plug in your external drive, it's also backed up to the cloud. It's so important to start this process of backing up your work early, because as your career goes on, you're just going to have more and more files, and nothing beats the peace of mind of knowing that every everything you create is secure and recoverable in the case of an emergency. Check out the link in the description on today's video to choose the backup option that works the best for you and start securing all of your work today. Thank you to Dropbox for sponsoring that portion of the video. Now, organization was something that never came naturally to me, even as a child. In elementary school, they would give us these things called agenda books, and the idea of an agenda book was for you to write down all your assignments and keep like a little calendar for yourself. And looking back on this, it's a very good thing that they did for us because it taught us how to keep a calendar and start planning our day, which is a skill that most adults need. Your boy decided I'm not doing the agenda book. I never used it. I kept all the assignments that I had to do stored in my head, managed to get into college. I kept a 3.0 GPA to keep my scholarship all through college with no organization. And this ended up being a huge detriment to me as I got into my business career because that strategy no longer worked. There were too many things to do. I essentially hit a bottleneck of having no system, meaning I started to lose jobs. I started to lose track of all the things that I had to do. Things started to slip through the cracks, and I finally had to get organized. I just started writing lists of everything that I needed to do in a particular day, aka what the elementary school agenda book was intended to teach me way back then. So I would write out everything that I had to do in a day. I would go through and micromanage this list. I mean, I'm talking at the beginning of the day, I would write, make the bed, do the dishes, put clothes in the wash machine. This is something that takes maybe 15 minutes, but just the physical act of checking these things off the list helped me be productive. It helped me move through my day more efficiently. And it got even bigger as I started writing all the assignments that I had to do, as I started writing all the different tasks that I wanted to accomplish. And if I didn't accomplish something, I moved it to the next day. And I've tried a number of different methods to do this. I've tried iPad, I've tried Notion. I am trying something new right now. But for me, a notebook was the easiest way to start. And when I look back on these times, I realized the lack of efficiency when it came to planning and organization is what kept me broke, because essentially it made every single day like its own entity. And by me storing all the tasks and things that I needed to accomplish inside my head, I was essentially only allowing myself to plan a couple days in advance. My business and the things that I was really trying to accomplish had no vision because I wasn't able to look into the future or look into the past and see what I had done previously, where my mistakes were, and what I was going to do in the future, and how I was going to make all this work into something that was actually meaningful. So having a plan, being organized is so simple, but a lot of artists choose to ignore it and then wonder why they're not making the amount of money they want to make. So the third mistake that I made that kept me broke was having the most atrocious sleep schedule possibly ever. I was going to bed at 1, 2 in the morning. I was waking up at 8 o'clock. I was getting 6 hours of sleep every night. And I was wondering why I couldn't focus and why the things that I was making were not as good as I felt they could be. And now, after getting myself on a sleep schedule where I'm sleeping 8 to 9 hours a night, I realized, oh, that was the reason why. It's kind of weird how that works. You don't realize what's holding you back while you're doing it until you make some type of adjustment and you can go back and look with more clear vision and see, hey, me sleeping 6 hours a night made it hard for me to talk in these YouTube videos. It made it harder for me to focus on my ideas. It made it harder for me to get as much done in a day as I possibly could. And I'm wondering why my performance isn't getting me the results that I hope for, which is making more money. And I kind of got stuck in this hustle mindset that so many people get trapped in. I was thinking, by staying up until 2 in the morning and editing these videos and waking up early, I'm getting more done. I'm being more productive. But the efficiency level in what I was doing was so subpar to where it could have been had I just given myself those extra 2 hours of sleep a night. You see, as artists and people creating things, we're constantly getting trapped in this idea of you have to be doing more, you have to produce more, you have to create more. But this constant pressure to create more essentially takes away from the quality of what you're actually making. And by taking away that quality, you're diluting what you're actually good at, the thing that you're hoping is going to make you money. So once I got my sleep schedule in order, a bunch of puzzle pieces started to fall into place. My exercise routine got more in order. My diet got more in order. I felt a lot better. And by feeling a lot better, I was more confident in my ideas. And I was also feeling much more clear. If you go on this channel and you look back at videos from 2018 and compare them to 2021 and 2020, 2022, you will see a huge difference in my ability to take my thoughts and actually articulate them out to the people viewing these videos. And I contribute this change to me actually getting enough sleep. And I don't exactly know the process or the scientific mechanism behind it, but I do know that when you sleep, your brain filters through information and figures out what's important, what needs to be at the forefront, and what's less important. So when it comes to getting your ideas out there or just trying to pass a test or study, sleeping is the key to filtering out all the stuff you don't need and remembering what's important. And for me, that's getting my ideas out to you and creating a clear and concise video. And in turn, by doing that, I'm doing my job better, and of course, I'm gonna make more money. So number 4 is so obvious, but it goes back to that boom and bust cycle that I talked about at the beginning of the video. Early on in my career, when I would get paid any type of money, I would just spend it on something stupid. Something that I didn't even really want. If you are an early follower of this channel, you know I used to have this crazy sneaker collection. I actually had a sneaker YouTube channel before this one, and I spent all the money that I made in college on these sneakers. And I was working a job that was actually paying me really well. I was in a very lucrative position to work this corporate internship type job. I think they were paying me $25 an hour at the time, and I blew it all. I spent all that money. Not to be cliche, but looking back on it, had I just put even half of that money into basic investments, I'd be sitting on a massive amount of money right now. Granted, the market's gone down a bit, but we're talking almost 10 years ago at this point. 10 years of growth, 10 years of compounding interest. But instead, it all went into sneakers, and I don't even know where they all are. And I think this goes back to the mindset of having money and just maturing as well. I don't blame myself for that. You know, it was a kind of a fun time in my life, I guess. But looking back on it through a more mature lens, this is definitely a reason why I don't have the level of wealth that I want to have at 30. It has a lot to do with mistakes that I made in my early 20s. So if you're watching this video now and you feel like you're someone who is spending a lot of your money on unnecessary things to just try to make yourself look cool or try to fit in with other people, forget all that. Focus on yourself. And if your goal is to make more money and grow wealth for yourself, put the money into something that's actually going to do that for you. And hey, maybe you're an expert at sneaker reselling or something and you're telling me I don't know what I'm talking about. That's completely fine. But for the most part, it's not going to get you where you want. Spend your money on things that can actually make you money. Now, number 5 is a funny one because it's sort of the flip side to what I just got done talking about. Obviously, spending your money on unnecessary things to impress other people is going to keep you broke. But something else that keeps you broke is lifestyle creep. And lifestyle creep is essentially what happens when you start making a little bit of money, you improve your relationship with money, you start having some savings, and you realize you can now afford things that you couldn't afford before. And rather than staying in the same place and being disciplined, you allow your lifestyle to creep up with the new amount of money you're making. So for example, we're just going to use super easy numbers here. Let's say that you're making $200 a month and you're spending $150 a month and you're saving $50 every single month. But then over time, your income grows to $400 a month. If you continue to spend that $150 a month, now you can save $250 every single month. It's a lot of money. That's a great place to be in. That is how you build wealth. But what happens to most people is they get up to that $400 that they're making and their lifestyle moves to $350. So they're spending $350 and they're still saving that same $50. And this is a mistake because you're making lifestyle decisions that don't allow you to take advantage of this new lucrative change in the proportion of money you're making to your expenses. Maybe you could move your expenses to $200. That's being reasonable. But by moving your expenses to that $350 mark and continuing to only save $50, you are now in the exact same position you were in before, but now you have more stress and more pressure on you to continue making the amount of money that you need to make. But most people end up spending this money on a new car. They end up spending it on a new house, which is the mistake that I made. I bought a house that I really didn't need to buy. There was no real difference between the house I had previously and the house that I ended up buying. And it took a lot of money out of my business, and it also forced me to have higher expenses every single month unnecessarily. And when I look back at this time, I would have had a lot of extra money to invest into things that would have made me more money. I could potentially potentially own an investment property at this point had I not made that decision. So lifestyle creep is a big one that you have to look out for as you finally start making more money. Now, number 6 is a pretty quick one, but I wanted to include it on this list because when I look back on the amount of money I was spending on this particular thing, it makes 0 sense to me because I easily could have done it myself. And this is never cooking, especially me cooking lunches. So when I was working at Epitome ATL, which is a sneaker store in Buckhead, I lived about 25 minutes away. So a lot of days I would go drive there, work for a couple hours, and I would go to Whole Foods and I would eat a healthy lunch there. But I look back on this time, I was probably spending $12 a day at Whole Foods on lunch, and I was buying something that I easily could have made myself. And it wasn't until I got closer to 30 that I actually tried to meal prep, and I realized it's so easy to throw some chicken into a crock pot and get shredded chicken with rice, put some sauce on it, get some frozen broccoli, throw it in an air fryer, and bang, you have the exact same meal that you're getting from Whole Foods for essentially $4. Now, it's funny, when I look back on this time, I was convincing myself that it was okay that I was spending this money because I was paying for convenience. I would think, oh, I don't have all this time to meal prep. I don't have all this time to plan out what I'm doing. And it wasn't until this year when I actually started planning meals and going to the store with real intention that I realized that's just a cop-out and excuse for me being lazy and not doing the thing I talked about in number 2, which is planning and preparing. At the end of the day, if you want to make money and save money, it all comes down to having a vision and a plan and essentially micromanaging yourself. Because as humans, we always want to go to the path of least resistance. We always want to go to, I'm just going to go out and buy food. I'm going to get the fast food, the fast answer, because I don't feel like putting in the work to actually plan out what I need to do. And I know some people are probably thinking $200 a week isn't really that big of a deal, but when you take $200 a week on food, and that's a low estimate, and multiply it times 52 weeks in a year, we're talking about $10,000 on food that could be put into something else. I probably could have cut that number in half had I just grocery shopped and actually planned accordingly. So cooking food is a big one, and it's something that I'm going to continue to do into the future, and I feel like I got a lot leaner once I started cooking my food as well. They put all types of BS into the stuff you buy at other places. A lot of butter goes into the food you eat at restaurants. The reason why it tastes so good. Now, number 7 is a big one, and it's something a lot of people in their early 20s do. I'm guilty of it, and it's going out with no budget. And I mean going out and like drinking, partying, having fun with your friends, even going out to nice dinners and just spending money. Not thinking, all right, I'm giving myself a limit of $100 tonight, or I'm going to bring $100 cash, and when this is gone, I'm going to turn into that guy trying to get drinks from my friends or saying I left my wallet at home. Whatever you got to do, being the stingy person. But I found myself always going out and just buying things for other people, buying myself things, having a good time, and then looking at my credit card or my debit account the next day and seeing $300, $400 spent, which was completely unnecessary. Yeah, I was having a good time, but not that good of a time. And now that I'm a little bit older, I just try to have a little bit of discipline when I go out and have fun, which happens a lot less frequently these days, but I'm no longer that guy giving a $40 tip to my friend at the bar. I'm no longer that guy buying multiple drinks for people that I just met. It happens. You know, I don't know if that's just a personal thing. I don't know if that's something that a lot of people can relate to, but I have a good time. And I found that sometimes I was having too much of a good time in my early 20s, and it resulted in me spending a lot of unnecessary money that could have been in my business or once again been saved and put into something that's actually going to get me paid. So there we go, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and end this one right there with a fun one. Thank you for watching today. If you have anything to contribute to this conversation, anything that you've experienced that made you a broke artist or broke creative person that you had to change, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts, and I'm sure everyone watching this video would love to have more insight from other people other than me. Thank you for watching. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe. See you in the next one.